you, Derek. And now we'll move forward with the part of the program, evacuation procedures and post-evacuation security. Our panel discussion will be led by Scott Cave. Scott is with Atlantic Business Continuity Services. He assists the organizations, including the town of Kiawah Island and the town of Seabrook Island, in their planning for emergency response, and he has made many visits to the town of Seabrook Island, where we've been doing a couple times a year. We do training and exercise sessions under Scott's leadership. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Connecticut College. He's certified by the Disaster Recovery Institute International. He's a past chairman of the Charleston Metro Chamber's Business Continuity Planning Council and past chairman of the Charleston Metro Chamber's Think Tech Division. On the panel, we will have the Charleston County Emergency Management, the liaison officer, Brock Clary. We'll have South Carolina Highway Patrol Traffic Management, Captain Robert Woods, Charleston County Sheriff's Office, Captain Don Martin. We have Charleston County EMS Deputy Chief Todd McGeorge, and from the St. John's Fire District, Fire Marshal Ryan Kunister. So please welcome Scott and his panel. Thank you.
Thank you all, and again, appreciate you all being here today. It's my pleasure to join you all and to lead what will be 3 panels today covering a variety of topics. And our topic right now is evacuation and security. So you all are fortunate to have a wealth of knowledge here to my right and to my left to talk about the evacuation plan, and post-landfall, some law enforcement issues will be discussed as well. And I think it would be helpful for us to start with the panelists to talk about some lessons learned from both an evacuation and law enforcement standpoint from Hurricane Matthew. And then we will open it up to the audience, because I know you all have a lot of questions about that. So let's hold the questions for now, and let's start off with the evacuation process. Would one of you, and probably I would say the Sheriff's Office would be the appropriate place to start. Would you like to talk about the evacuation process, how you saw that, and what we learned from it?
Good morning. I was not introduced. My name is Jim Woods. I'm the traffic division commander with the Sheriff's Office, and Rob Woods is on the other end. He's with the Highway Patrol. So if you disagree with the Woods today, he's probably going to be the one you disagree with. We learned quite a bit during Matthew, and I'll start by telling you this. One thing that I really learned. The sheriff sent myself and Lieutenant Moniz, who at the time was my traffic lieutenant. We just attended the National Hurricane Conference in New Orleans. And I will tell you, the one thing that I really came away learning, when I came back, the sheriff said, "What did you learn? What did you see?" I'm going to tell you, in South Carolina, we're in good shape. We really are. There's a lot of coordination that goes on in this state that didn't occur in the other states. One of the last things that we did is we had a panel, and it was from, all of our brother and sister states that are right here next to us. And there's one state, to give you an example, that when they decide to evacuate, they do it on a county-by-county basis. In South Carolina, the governor pulls the pin, and we all coordinate together, and we make it happen. But you can imagine if you've got a ton of counties and you've got 2 or 3 that want to evacuate and 2 and 3 that don't, the Highway Patrol, the locals, they really had a tough time during evacuation. So, when I sat there, I'll be quite honest with you, I sat a little higher in my seat as he spoke, because we're in real good shape. We do a lot of coordination here. One thing that I don't know if I've talked with any of you in this room before, but I've been out here several times, and one thing that we preach is leaving early. And that happened during Matthew. I am very proud and happy to tell you that we had some deputies at traffic control points that weren't seeing anything. And I was very happy to hear that. That meant that folks heeded the warnings, they left early. Ourself and the Highway Patrol, we've had meetings since Matthew and done some more coordination, and we've identified intersections that we may not, have to put people out there in the middle of nowhere because they're not seeing anything. We've seen other intersections that we have to address. I guess the one thing, if I learned one huge lesson from Matthew, was social media. Folks knew where to go. They knew what was happening. I was out on Ladson Road at Highway 78, which is a busy intersection for us, and we had folks coming by. Myself and my deputies were standing in the roadway, and we had folks coming by telling us things that we didn't know, and they were getting it off of social media. And believe it or not, most of it was accurate stuff. And I think one guy said that that he had seen somewhere in social media that there was an ugly guy directing traffic at Ladson. That was me. That was very accurate. But a lot of social media stuff, a lot of Twitter feeds, a lot of things going on, not only from individuals but through the media, through some of these other folks. Social media has just gone leaps and bounds. To give you a little background on me, I've been doing this 37 years. I was a state trooper during Hugo. When I started my law enforcement career, Hurricane David came and hit, and it was a little old small category. I think it was a Category 1 storm. I had been a police officer like 2 days. I grew up on Sullivan's Island. The chief over there told me, he said, "You grew up over here, you know what the hell to do, get out there." And that's the training I had. But we have really gone leaps and bounds, and the coordination here is just incredible. Are there things that we can do better? Sure there is, and we look at it all the time. We discuss it a lot, but we're in good shape.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Could you all talk about this question and issue that's come up about the traffic control points? When the mandatory evacuation routes will be enforced and when they may not be enforced.
Rob, you want to?
And let me begin by saying that once a mandatory evacuation is ordered, we're still focusing on adequately distributing the traffic among the assigned routes. One of the things we want to caution everybody is, as Derek mentioned, the response rate from Matthew was really pretty low. So some of the traffic patterns that we saw during Matthew are not likely to be typical of a mass evacuation. And I think that's really important to understand first. If we see a high response rate during an evacuation of the entire coast, at current estimates, we're looking at moving about 1.5 million people 100 miles inland, and we have on average about 36 hours in which to do that. Now, add this into the equation. The 3 fastest growing areas on the east coast of the United States are Hilton Head, Charleston, and Myrtle Beach. So that situation is not likely to improve anytime soon. So as far as any flexibility in routes, there may be some flexibility in routes early during the mandatory evacuation when the response is still relatively low. But one of the things that I want to echo from my colleague Jim Woods is the level of coordination that takes place. For example, in the Charleston area, Charleston County Sheriff's Office at their traffic control points within their area of operation have a certain degree of flexibility as to how they move that traffic. But before they exercise that flexibility, that's coordinated through a unified command to ensure that what they're doing with traffic does not adversely impact another area of the county. Okay? The evacuations don't happen in a vacuum. What happens here in Kiawah with the movement of traffic in Seabrook may very well affect what's happening, for example, on the I-26 reversal if we're allowing that traffic to go north on 17 to 526 to I-26, which then could slow the evacuation of the city of Charleston, for example. So before any of those decisions are made, they're coordinated among all the agencies that have responsibility for that evacuation. Was that sufficiently?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So let's also talk about security during evacuation and after landfall, because security is certainly a concern throughout that entire evacuation process and up to the point that residents are allowed to return. So can some of you just tackle this topic of how security is handled, especially during a hurricane when we know social media provides a lot of good information, but it can also provide a lot of challenging information with rumors, with looting, and other challenges that I'm sure you all were on the front lines with.
Well, good morning. I'm Captain Martin, and I work with the Sheriff's Office, naturally, and I'm in charge of the Patrol Division. And what we do is when we go to an emergency operations, we go to two 12-hour shifts, basically from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And the entire all the sworn personnel are basically attached to the Patrol Division, with the exception of the Traffic Division, which is delegated to the checkpoints. And what we do is we put these additional personnel within the Patrol Division, and we send them out to various areas in the county. Now, your particular area, Seabrook and Kiawah, what I do is I relegate a sergeant and a lieutenant and probably 3 or 4 deputies out there to go out there and check that end of Johns Island. It's particularly your area, and make sure everybody's moving and doing what they need to be doing. Now, as far as the checkpoints, the mayor mentioned earlier that we don't sit at the checkpoint. He's correct on that. But what I like to do is monitor that traffic circle, because that way I can monitor what's coming on the island to Seabrook as well as Kiawah Island. So that's basically how we relocate the security of when the hurricane is over and getting people. We vet people coming on the island. If they are out there, there's some people in Hurricane Matthew were staying out there on the island. We check their driver's license, check their credentials, and make sure they need to be out there doing what they need to be doing. So that's pretty much how we handle the security part of it.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Brock, from the Charleston County Emergency Management Department, can you talk a little bit within the Charleston County EOC? How is the EOC coordinating all these activities and responding to some of the incidents that may come up, whether it be questions about looting or questions about traffic flowing off of Johns Island? How are you all coordinating that?
So to answer the second part of the question first, we've talked about various communication methods. Social media, Charleston County Emergency Management has a Facebook page, has an app, has a Twitter feed. So all our official declarations as far as information sharing, evacuation procedures, we'll post to those sites. A probably even more effective way, because it's a one-on-one almost communication, is the county's Citizens Emergency Line, and that activates when there's an emergency. That's run literally next door to the Emergency Operations Center up on off Ladson Road in the northern part of the county, and we have literally, it's a hotline, and so it's 843-746-3900, and that activates when there is an emergency, and we have operators in that room that take calls from citizens, questions everything from, hey, what is my evacuation route, to what is the status of Seabrook Island, can I get back in? So that almost is a more effective way, because it's a one-on-one communication, and those operators literally are next door to the Emergency Operations Center, which is coordinating activities countywide. Everybody up here on this panel has a representative from their agency in the EOC. When we were staffed with Hurricane Matthew, we had about 88 people per shift in the EOC. And so just having us all in the same operating space, we're all seeing the same reports, we're all sharing information over the web EOC system the mayor talked about earlier. So we've got that common operating picture. So all the agencies are seeing the same thing there in the EOC, and that's getting coordinated and disseminated down to their guys and girls on the ground at traffic control points, out in the fire stations, doing debris removal, things like that. So the EOC kind of serves as a hub, not only for that external information to the public, but also to information to the responding agencies. It's very important we all have the same situational awareness of what's going down, and that's what we're trying to do up at the Emergency Operations Center.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brock. And this will be the last question for me for the panel before I open it up to you all. But for our friends here from the fire department, from EMS, can you just set a level of expectation for residents if they choose to stay? What would be the status of your emergency services? And for those who are returning, what would likely be the status of your services upon return? What are you doing to restore your services?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. My name is Ryan Kunitzer. I'm Fire Marshal of St. John's Fire District. So a little bit about the fire department's operation, and especially we learned quite a bit from Matthew. a good, I want to say it was a good trial run for us, but it was good. If we had anything more severe, we learned quite a few lessons from that as well. So our first thing is pre-storm, we're really securing our stations, securing extra equipment, making sure we have extra equipment available for post-storm. Anytime if you have anybody that has a physical disability or needs special assistance, we're there to help, especially once that evacuation order has been sent. I know we do have some people that live on second and third floors that need assistance getting to their cars and things. We're there. We're available to help with those pre-storm. So once the storm nears, and in the what happened with Hurricane Matthew is kind of in the early morning hours before the storm actually just arrived to us and the winds picked up and the rain picked up, is it was made, the decision was countywide to cease operations as far as fire departments go. Once the wind gets to a certain level, 40, 50 mile per hour winds, it's unsafe for even our apparatus to be on the road. So what you can expect if you stay is a reduction in that service, especially if you have a medical issue or something has happened to your residents as well. We will not be responding to those during that time frame that it's not safe for us to be out there. So what had happened is there was a time frame when Matthew was actually coming and past us until the afternoon hours of, I believe that's October 8th, where we did not have actual assets on either of Kiawah and Seabrook Island. Okay, so that's what you can expect. We will not be here to answer a call for service. Now, once that wind threshold drops a little bit and that storm leaves, then we can return to the islands and start making those initial windshield surveys. And if you do call 911 and an emergency call does get logged, they don't ignore your call. But especially if it's a medical call or you really need some type of critical service, you will be the top priority calls that when we respond to the island, we'll try to get to first. So you're not alone. You're alone for a little while. I hate saying that, but we do pull those assets. So keep that in mind as well if you are staying.
And I'm Todd McGeorge with Charleston County EMS. One thing I wanted to reiterate is the importance of when the evacuation order is issued to go ahead and do so. Because of the fact that when the wind fields do go above 40 for Charleston County EMS, we're obviously not as heavy as a fire truck. Maybe they can go to 50, but we have to stop at 40. That we're not going to be able to respond when those wind fields are sustained above 40 miles an hour until they subside back below. When they do go back down, obviously we're working in conjunction with the fire department to establish routes to get to those people that are essentially held in queue that called 911 during the time where we're not responding, and it's prioritized out with the highest acuity, and we respond to those calls. But there still may be a delayed response due to debris in the roadway, trees down, those kinds of things. It takes time to clear those roads out to be able to get emergency vehicles in. We also pre-plan ahead of time with the air medical assets across the state. We had 6 helicopters on standby from air medical with MedTrans available if we needed them in this area in case we couldn't get an ambulance directly to the scene. Maybe we could get a battalion chief vehicle or a Tahoe, and we could coordinate with air services to get them out by air if need be. So just please pay attention to that evacuation order. Make arrangements, especially if you have folks that are mobility impaired, to have a way to get them to wherever you're trying to go to, whether it's a shelter or going inland to a friend's house or wherever. Make sure you have that coordinated ahead of time. You have plenty of medications ahead of time and any other medical supplies that you may need, such as oxygen or those types of items.
Great, thank you. And actually, I'll just follow that up with one other question. Can the panelists just address this question of how people who require assistance during evacuation, maybe I have relatives here on Seabrook or Kiawah, and I live far away and I'm not able to get here, and they don't have the ability to self-evacuate. So what type of services are available to assist people who don't have the means to evacuate themselves?
So I can take that. So Charleston County runs a transportation program for those who don't have their means to evacuate, don't have a car. Those are done primarily with school buses and some CARTA buses. We used about 80 or so of those buses in Matthew to evacuate people. They are picked up from identified pre-stage pickup points throughout the county. Those are in the county's hurricane guide, which are available at the back table back there, as well as online. They're also marked. You can see the sign. So you can proceed to those, if you're ambulatory and able to walk, you can proceed to those pickup points, and a bus will pick you up, and it's going to take you to a shelter. It's going to take you to a Red Cross shelter, which is, the kind of the saying about a Red Cross shelter, it's a lifeboat, not a cruise ship. So you're talking very minimum, it's a safe place, so if you have a family member that cannot evacuate by any other means, and we tell people if you can get out by some other method, use that, but as a last resort, we can get you to a Red Cross shelter via one of those buses, but be sure to bring bedding, some food and material and stuff like that, because it's a safe place, and that's about all it is. So for people who can move on their own power, that's a way to evacuate, and there are pickup points here in this area that you can go to. For those with special medical needs, it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder to communicate. Somebody in a wheelchair or not able to move. Your best bet at that point in time is to call that citizen's information number, and they will transfer that call basically either to EMS if they're available to do it, or we do have some buses that have wheelchair lifts and things to move people who are not ambulatory, not able to move. But that can be coordinated through the Emergency Operations Center, and all those numbers are listed in the Charleston County Hurricane Guide, which is available hard copy in the back and online. One of our lessons learned coming out of Matthew is that our bus transportation plan, which we had never really implemented before, it had been on the books for about 8 or 9 years and never really implemented before, that part worked pretty well. We were able to move a couple hundred people to shelters. Our special medical needs, that's one thing we've identified we need to improve, is how do we bring in additional assets, either for a resource request to bring in additional ambulances or some special medical transportation. With a little bit harder problem with that. We did get it done, but that was one that we identified as an area to improve, and that's one thing we just actually went through in our countywide hurricane drill last week to practice getting better at. So if you have a family member or know somebody in the community that doesn't have transportation, doesn't have a way, they can get out, they can get to safety.
Okay, yes, so let me open up to questions now. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, for you, please. You had given a number, telephone number a minute ago. When you first had, what was your number?
So it's 843-746-3900. And it's the Charleston County Citizens Information Hotline. And you'll see that we activated that. Matthew hit on a Saturday. I think we activated the Citizens Info line either the preceding Tuesday or Wednesday. So you'll see on local media, we'll put it up on the Facebook page via local news and everything, of when that line will go active. And if you can't find an answer to a question either in the hurricane guide or anything else, you can call that number and somebody can track it down.
Usually once the governor starts talking about evacuation, you can bet that citizens line will be activated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, next question. Yes, sir, right up front.
I'm concerned that our experience from Matthew may lull people into a false sense of security. First of all, from the standpoint that you need not evacuate early. I know we were influenced by previous storms and all the horror stories we heard about getting out of the area. So we left on Wednesday. And I'm afraid people are going to just stay around till the last possible minute, and then we're going to have real traffic problems getting out.
Yeah.
Secondly, I know a number of people that stayed here on Seabrook, and their attitude is, well, the experience wasn't bad. So that next time around, we're going to find more and more people choosing to stay. And if we get hit with a really major storm, there's going to be all kinds of problems. We're talking deaths, serious injury. I don't know how we get the message out next time, if there is a next time, that we really need to take evacuation seriously and early enough. But I think all the organizations here really need to work hard to achieve that message.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. So let me open up to the panelists. What ideas do you have to fight this sense of complacency that may exist here within the residents?
You're right, it's a challenge. And we're in a catch-22 because what do we want? Do we want a terrible storm so that everybody says, well, the next one that comes, I am leaving? Or do we want something like Matthew? So we're in a delicate position here. I will say, you know, and I have preached this, and my cohort on the other end of the table will tell you this. If you do not leave early and you wait for an evacuation order, most likely the plans that you have made to go where you want to go, you can't go there. You're going to have to go on the evacuation routes, and you're going to have to go in the direction we tell you to go. And that's what I always preach. If you leave early, you left early, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I hope you shared that with your friends. Come on, let's get out of here. Because if you wait until the governor says we're starting an evacuation, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to go where you want to go. Another challenge that came up at the hurricane conference was Florida and Georgia both said, and North Carolina said, South Carolina evacuated early, and they took all our hotel rooms. When we told people to get out of the state, there wasn't anywhere for them to stay. So it kind of was, it put a feather in our cap, you know, that our folks have heeded that and they're leaving early. That's another thing you got to think about. If you wait till the last minute, you're not going to get you a room even at the Motel 6 up the road. You might be sleeping in your car somewhere. So that's something you need to think about also. Restaurants, you know, people from the other states were saying they just wanted to get something to eat. They couldn't do that. So leaving early is really the way to go.
And just one thing, remember the evacuation, and all these guys up here will tell you the same thing. The evacuation is triggered of when tropical storm force winds are going to start impacting the area. And that can be up to 12 to 24 hours prior to the actual hurricane hitting here. Right? So that is why the governor backs up that evacuation. And Captain Woods talked about the 30-something hours to evacuate a particular area. So all that has to back up in order to get everybody out of here before those winds hit and things get really bad. So it could be a daylight today, and the governor is going to issue the evacuation order. And just know that that's the science behind it, and that's the method behind it, is that all these things have to happen to get everybody out in time safely before those winds start. And it may be a beautiful day like today and picture perfect, and you're like, why are they telling me to evacuate? Well, because in order to get everybody out in time, we've got to back it up X amount of hours. So everybody up here will tell you, when the governor says it's time to go, you need to go, and you need to go as soon as you can.
Yeah, and I will just emphasize that by saying, you know, having worked closely with both the town of Kiawah Island and Seabrook Island, you know, their plans have a lot of communications in them, and I know that those plans were followed in terms of communicating and emphasize the need for evacuation. But the reality is that neither town can drag people out of their homes. And none of these people here have the resources or time or potentially even the authority to drag people from their homes. So all of you become the centers of influence amongst your neighbors and amongst your blocks and neighborhoods to try to convince the need for evacuation. You all are just as important as these government officials are. Okay, let's move on. Let me go to the back room, then I'll come up. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
First, a comment and a question. First of all, a comment. We've been through several hurricanes in past states, and I got to tell you, the evacuation plan for South Carolina was extremely well done during Matthew, and I want to thank you very much for making that so. Really appreciate it. Now, on my question is, certainly Katrina is the poster child for failure and collapse of law enforcement and security. I guess I've never heard any feedback on any law enforcement or security issues post-Matthew, either during Matthew or post-Matthew on Johns Island. Do you all have any feedback on any issues? And if so, were there any lessons learned regarding that? Thank you.
We didn't have really any issues. Everybody listened to what they needed to be doing. They got out when they got out. We didn't have any issues within the county area with the deputies patrolling. Now, I did know in some of the municipalities there were the break-ins occurring to homes and such like that. We in the sheriff's office had our deputies continually patrolling areas, so you didn't know where we were. We were all over the place. We weren't sitting in one spot, you know, with dome lights on or whatever. We were always constantly moving. As far as your islands, I had deputies up on your islands, patrolling on your islands, up until we were given the order to to go ahead and shelter in place. So you had personnel up here on your islands up until we were told. We were the last ones off the islands and sheltered in place. And then when we were allowed to get out of the fire departments where we were sheltering in place, I had guys heading out to see, you know, make sure the roads were clear. The fire department was getting involved, getting us to get to where we needed to get with trees across the road and such. But one of our areas to come out here, of course, is Seabrook and Kiawah, and guys were going out there. We could only get in so far because of the flooding and some of the trees down. But then of course I put those guys at the traffic circle, so I could relegate traffic coming on the island if they belong there, as well as looking out for Freshfield. So pretty much that's how we handled it.
Okay, right here.
Yes, we had a problem in trying to determine, for our insurance purposes, exactly when we could evacuate and when we had to be back. Because we left Wednesday morning before the mandatory evacuation at 3 o'clock. And the insurance company said, but you left before the mandatory evacuation. And we said, but our island said that we should go early. And so we went. And they said, well, you left before the mandatory. And we came back on Wednesday or Tuesday morning. And on Monday, we didn't know we could come back until noon on Monday. And it was too late for us to then come back. And then again, the insurance company said, well, they said you could come back at noon on Monday, and you should have come back at noon on Monday, and you came back on noon on Tuesday, and so therefore you're not covered.
Yeah. Well, listen, I understand the challenges with insurance company. I don't think we can expect, though, an insurance company to provide for, were you asking them to reimburse you for hotel costs, or what specifically were you trying to address with them?
No, I mean, we had damage, and they said, well, that could have happened before, or if you had been there, maybe you wouldn't have had the damage.
I see.
Okay,
Right,
well,
yeah.
but all we were trying to do is we were just trying to get something from the island, from the town of Seabrook, that says, we asked you to leave that morning early, and we told you at noon on Monday that you could come back, but we understand that many people cannot get back then.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could come back on Tuesday morning, that's fine. We need a statement from the town of Seabrook Island telling us when we should have gone and come back.
Yeah, I'm going to defer here to Derek Becker. Go ahead, Derek.
Okay, so number one, your insurance company's wrong. And you probably need to file a complaint with the Department of Insurance. They have an inspector general, and they actually go and look into those types of claims, because the mandatory evacuation is independent of any type of disaster recovery resources. The evacuation is for life safety purposes. And them telling you that your damage was the result of you not evacuating, it's BS. It's absolute BS, and I'll tell you why, because the insurance companies are having to pay out a lot. And so they're strapped and looking for every reason. But in reference to getting a statement to help you along the way, it's all available on our website at scemd.org. And there's a link in the hurricane guide, so you can visit it that way, scemd.org. And there's a Hurricane Matthew page, and we have all of the news releases, the governor's executive orders, still archived there, so you as a reference.
So in closing, we talked some throughout the day, and Derek mentioned this earlier about the importance of social media. And I can say from personal experience that all these agencies up here have great social media presence and accounts on Twitter and other sites. So I would encourage you to look for information during an event from the social media accounts. Charleston County Emergency Management does a great job, and the Sheriff's Office does a great job. Fire Department, EMS have social media presence as well?
Not as strong as probably some of the other agencies. We work through EMD.
Sure, right. But we have information around this room that has all sorts of Twitter and other types of social media accounts for all these agencies. So please make use of that information as well. I want to thank our panelists very much for the information and for their time today. And we'll now move on to our next drawing. Thank you all very much.